are back. We are live. We are Think Tech Talks doing community matters today on a given Wednesday, the day of the opening of the state legislature. And we have in the studio Mike Hansen, Michael Hansen. What's your middle initial?
N. For Norman.
That's to distinguish him from all other Mike Hansens in the world.
And there's many of them.
And he's the president of the Hawaii Shippers Council, which if you don't know about, you need to know about. Welcome to the show, Mike.
Thank you, Jay.
So I guess the reason we're talking today is because of a news story that actually came out after the end of the year, but which involves the surrender of the license of Pasha, I don't know the corporate name, to do inter-island barge transportation as of 12/31/2013.
That's correct.
Which is a profound change. I mean, they're pulling out of Hawaii, essentially.
Not entirely.
Okay.
What happened to Pasha is that they had a certificate to operate and carry cargo inter-island or intra-state between Honolulu, Kahului, Hilo, and Wili. That was issued by the Hawaii State Public Utilities Commission. And that is called a Certificate of Public Convenience and Necessity.
Okay, just to distinguish, now the reason you're saying they didn't pull out completely is because they also do shipments to and from the state.
They also operate interstate.
And what they're doing is they're pulling out of the inter-island trade in the state.
Right. In fact, their routing is, from what I understand, is not going to change. Mm-hmm. They operate from San Diego to Honolulu Harbor, and then to Kahului, Maui, and Hilo on the Big Island. And that routing will remain in place because they've got cargo for those three Hawaiian ports.
From out of state.
Interstate cargo.
So they won't be transporting cargo between the islands.
They will not be allowed to take local cargo intrastate. Between the islands.
Got it. Okay, and so the question...
These are two separate markets. The interstate market on a common carriage basis is regulated by the Federal Surface Transportation Board, and inter-island water transportation is regulated by the Hawaii State Public Utilities Commission.
Okay, so I guess we could wheel this back just a little and say what exactly is Pasha?
Pasha,
P-A-S-H-A.
The Pasha Group was formed they first started business in 1947 in the vicinity of San Pedro Harbor in the Los Angeles area. And the original Mr. Pasha was a Turkish immigrant, and he operated a service station next to the harbor. And as more and more vehicles started being carried as cargo on these ships, he got involved with prepping and holding and organizing the vehicles for shipment. And that business now has grown into 7 very large roll-on, roll-off terminals around the United States. And they're a major operator of these terminals, known as roll-on, roll-off terminals.
American company, American ships.
Well, those are terminals, not ships. In 2005, Pasha launched a new service between San Diego, which is one of their large ro-ro terminals, and Honolulu with a U.S.-built vessel called the Jean Ann, and that was begun in 2005. And that's the ship that's currently operating the San Diego, Honolulu, Kahului, Hilo loop. And that's
just one ship.
Yes. But later this year, they have a second ship coming on. And the name of that ship is the Marjorie C. And the first ship, the Jean Ann, is what's known as a pure car and truck carrier. The Jean Ann will be a combination carrier. Below her main decks, she'll be the so-called garage ship for trucks and cars.
You mean you just drive them on?
Exactly, it's a ro-ro. And above decks, she's going to be container, with and she'll have her own container cranes on board the ship. So that's a new service that will be challenging Matson and Horizon in the container business. And the Pasha has already successfully challenged Matson and Horizon in the carriage of vehicles.
Well, that's, yeah, I want to sort of get a handle on, up till this event where Pasha pulled out of the inter-island trade, how was it going between, you know, because we all know that Matson is the 800-pounder here.
Sure.
And Young Brothers, that's to and from the islands, and what Young Brothers is inter-island, and that's the 800-pounder inter-island.
Right.
So how did this little company, relatively little, at least
they're pretty big.
Okay, out of this external company that had
break into the market.
Yeah, yeah.
Basically, they came in with a more efficient vessel in terms of cargo handling, and because they operate these ro-ro terminals, 7 of them around the country, they're experts in this business. And so they were able to take business away from both Matson and from Horizon. In particular, they went after the new car markets and the rental car markets. And inter-island, from what I understand, their main focus was shifting rental car fleets from one island to another according to demand.
Yeah, big thing. And why does it remind me somehow, and I'd like to follow this thread with you in our discussion, why does it remind me of the super ferry? Why does it remind me of that?
Because the super ferry was a roll-on, roll-off vessel.
Right. Except the super ferry was a one-day only kind of thing where you didn't have to leave your car.
She was operating entirely inter-island.
Yeah.
And just to Maui, really. And the super ferry was a catamaran hull. This is not a catamaran hull. This is a pure displacement hull. It's a very large vessel.
But in terms of, you know, the functionality of the ship, you could roll on, you could go to another island in the same day.
But Matson has roll-on, roll-off capacity as well on some of their container ships.
But on the container ships, you don't sit in the car.
No.
You can't take that trip. You have to fly, meet your car on the other end.
And you don't do this on Pasha either. Pasha's,
right.
Yeah, you tender your car for shipment. The car goes on the ship, and you do not.
So the fact is, though,
it's not a ferry.
Pasha got into this market. Despite the power of these two, Hawaii-based organizations, Pasha got in.
But Pasha's, like I said, is an expert in this area of handling vehicles.
Yeah.
They operate very large terminals.
So they could do it.
So they knew how to do it.
And they had, in order to make the trip interstate, they needed to get some federal license from federal agencies.
All you do is you file your tariff rates with what's known as the Federal Surface Transportation Board.
And that's not a permission thing, it's just an informational thing?
Exactly.
Okay, so that part is easy for Pasha to do, then it's pure competition after
exactly.
that. Now the interstate, or rather inter-island, intrastate, thank you. You know, I learned so much from you, Mike. That's different because then you have to go to the PUC and get effectively a license to move cargo or anybody.
That's correct.
In intrastate, inter-island, yeah.
Yes. Yeah, the within the state of Hawaii, if you're carrying cargo or passengers by water, you come under the Hawaii Water Carriers Act of 1975. And that act also applied to the super ferry, and the super ferry would have had to file for a certificate, and the certificate's called the Certificate of Public Convenience and Necessity.
That's an interesting term for a certificate.
It's used pretty broadly in the regulatory world across the United States. Yeah. And it's essentially the same kind of certificate that, for example, a telephone company would get, or the electric company. It's a monopoly license, essentially.
But the language is interesting, because the language gives you some idea of the concept there. So what was it? Public
convenience.
Convenience. So,
and necessity.
Okay, so it should be convenient to the public, and it should be a trip that's necessary to the public.
Right.
And the implication is that unless it's convenient and necessary, we're not going to give you the certificate.
Yeah, that's correct. But it's also it's arranged for what was called, or I guess it still is, what is a natural monopoly.
Yes.
And so that's the whole concept of what is a natural monopoly. For example, an electrical utility. Once you put the power plants in and do your grid, you know, can a second company come in and duplicate that efficiently or effectively? Probably not.
What's the relationship between the certificate and the designation as common carrier?
For example, there are certain barge services that are operated inter-island that are operated on what's known as a contract basis. The barge or the vessel is not open for a person from the public to come down and tender their cargo and have it shipped on that vessel. So a common carrier is one vessel, is what's known in the law as a general vessel, a vessel that's open to anyone who comes to the wharf and tenders their legal cargo.
Right. So it's open to the public.
Exactly.
But not all the public, I guess. I guess what you're making the distinction is the common carrier isn't.
Anybody can, if you're operating common carrier, anyone or any corporation, natural person or artificial person, can go and tender their cargo to a common carrier. The common carrier is obliged to accept it, providing it's legal and you pay your freight and all that sort of thing.
So the certificate of convenience and necessity
is only issued to, in the sense of the water carriers, to those operating common carrier.
Okay, got it.
And then there's a separate world of contract carriage. For example, the fuel barges that haul petroleum products inter-island are contract carriage.
What's the difference?
They're
not open to the public.
Exactly.
Okay. Just to whoever is contracting with them.
Right.
And it'll be like one party.
Exactly.
Loading the whole barge up with fuel or whatever it is.
Exactly.
Okay, so moving back to you said that this certificate allows you to have a monopoly, okay?
Sure.
But then Pasha wasn't getting a monopoly. Pasha was getting, you know, the right to operate along with other carriers that had the certificate, right?
Right. Well, for example, in the trucking market, there's still these kinds of certificates are issued. And there's many different trucking companies that all have a PUC number issued to them. So you can have more than one carrier, for example, in a particular market. Okay,
so here we have this company from elsewhere.
Yeah.
Taking the chance, using their efficient systems and practices and what have you.
They established their route, they established their business, and then they went to the PUC in 2009 and asked for the right to carry cargo inter-island.
And they got it.
And they got it on an interim basis. And that interim...
What's the difference, yeah?
Yeah, it wasn't a permanent certificate. And the interim basis, the interim certificate expired December 31, 2013. And what had happened in the interim from the time that Pasha had applied for the certificate and the time the PUC had granted them their interim certificate is that the Hawaii State Legislature in 2011 passed Act 213.
Aha. Now, Act 213 emerges, it walks on the stage.
The plot thickens.
The plot thickens. So, before we get to the origins, let's just help people understand what Act 213 says.
Okay. Act 213 amended the Hawaii Water Carriers Act of 1974, and it imposed some new stringent requirements that Pasha was going to be unable to meet.
What were they?
Well, they were a series of new findings requirements on findings from the point of view of the PUC.
Findings the PUC would have to make in order to extend or issue a certificate.
Yeah, right. And the second thing that it did is it banned temporary or interim certificates unless there was an emergency.
Okay. What was the, there must have been some legislative
purpose or policy involved here, at least articulated.
I couldn't find the legislative history of it, I just don't know. But it's obviously crafted. The amendments to the Hawaii Water Carriers Act of 1974 were obviously crafted to benefit young brothers.
Why do you say that?
Because it made it far more difficult for another carrier to enter the market and be granted a certificate.
Okay, so if I'm like Pasha and I come in and I try to enter the inter-island, intra-state carrier, market, then I've got to get a certificate. I can't now, under this 213, Act 213, I can't get an interim certificate at all. It's not available.
Right. Yeah, not available.
Period.
To get a permanent certificate is far more difficult.
Okay. What are the additional barriers imposed by Act 213 on getting a permanent certificate?
There's a lot more disclosure required in terms of both financial and operating disclosures. And
wouldn't that benefit the competition to have that publicly disclosed?
Oh, sure, yeah, but it also puts it just puts a greater burden. I mean, you have to be able to conjure up, exactly what your operation is going to look like over time, et cetera, et cetera. It's just more and more difficult to do that, and they want some very sophisticated projections of what the capital expenditures are going to be in terms of vessels and other kinds of items that would be necessary.
Now, if I was already operating under a certificate that was issued,
a permanent certificate,
thank you, that was previously issued some time ago, at the time that certificate was issued, I wouldn't have had to go through any of this.
That's right.
And the Act does not affect that permanent certificate, the one already in existence.
That's correct.
Only talks about new ones for newcomers into the market.
That's correct.
And so because the interim certificate that was going to expire for Pasha on December, it did expire for Pasha
12/31, yeah.
12/31, just a few days ago.
Yeah.
Okay, was only interim. That means that Pasha would have had to comply with all of the requirements for a permanent certificate that you're talking about.
Right.
The new ones, the new requirements in Act 213.
Right. And as a result of the how onerous these requirements are, Pasha did not file for a permanent certificate and didn't make any of the filings that would have been necessary for the PUC to even extend their interim certificate under the old regime.
So it was really dead in the water, no pun intended.
Yes.
Okay, so just one thing to straighten out. I remember at one of our think tech programs at the Plaza Club here last year, I think, and maybe you were there, maybe, there was somebody raised this thing about Act 213, and as I recall, the essential provision that really blew it up was a provision that said the PUC could not issue the permanent certificate if there was, unless it was satisfied that the newcomer, the one looking for the permanent certificate, was not, that certificate would not have an adverse effect on anyone already operating in the market.
That's correct, yeah.
So you put it in your words, because I'm going off recollection.
No, that's exactly right. The new findings requirements include the PUC must find that there is a need for this new service, which is apparently wasn't really spelled out in the original legislation, and that it mustn't do any harm to the existing carriers. So this is a,
it's really, I mean,
it's an anti-competition.
It's, and let me also clarify one thing before we take our break, is that in this market, at the time all of this is happening, there's Young Brothers doing the inter-island, intrastate trade,
right,
and there's Pasha under the temporary certificate,
right,
doing the inter-island, intrastate trade, and those are the only two players in the inter-island, intrastate trade at the time.
More or less. There's I'll explain after we break how Matson operates inter-island.
Okay, great. It's unfolding. You need to know about this stuff. This affects all of us, and you'll see why. That's Mike Hansen, Mike N. Hansen for Norman.
the president of the Hawaii Shippers Council. This is Think Tech Talks. I'm Jay Fidel. We're talking about community matters today. We'll be right back after this break for more on Act 213. We'll also talk about the Jones Act. We'll be right back.
We want to thank our underwriters.
Hawaiian Electric Company and its affiliates Maui Electric on Maui and Hawaii Electric Light Company on Hawaii Island are deeply committed to the communities they serve.
Galen Ho is a senior executive of BAE Systems, a global defense, security, and aerospace company.
The High-Tech Development Corporation, the state's leading technology agency, attached to the Department of Business, Economic Development, and Tourism.
Castle and Cook Hawaii, with a time-honored legacy that spans more than 160 years and revolves around its mission of investing in Hawaii, creating communities, and providing for the needs of our state.
Hawaii Gas, formerly the Gas Company, a proponent of the Liquefied Natural Gas Initiative, helping Hawaii achieve its transition to clean energy and a better energy future.
Collateral Analytics, a Hawaii-based tech company empowering the real estate industry with greater and faster access to the tools and data they need to make better informed property investment decisions.
I'm Nicole Horry. Thanks so much for joining us on Think Tech.
I'm Maria Kashem. See you next time.
Okay, we're back. We're live. We're Think Tech Talks talking about community matters. Let me say that again. Community matters. Okay, with Mike N. Hansen, president of the Hawaii Shippers Council. And I think it's really important, this show, this discussion of what goes on the waterfront and the legislature, so you can see, you know, how that loaf of bread got to you, because people think it comes down from cargo cult. And we had our 1 minute discussion offline a minute ago about cargo cult, so I want to take a digression here. And Mike, could you tell us about cargo cult? What is that?
Cargo cults developed in the area of Melanesia in the Pacific Islands during World War II. When the GIs would show up on a remote island in Melanesia with all their goods, the natives thought it was a miracle. And they started building small models of airplanes and other kinds of vessels and worshiping them, hoping that the cargo would materialize again.
That's as much sophistication as they had about how the loaf of bread arrived on their table or whatever it was they were importing. And, you know, I don't, you know, in Hawaii, we know there's an ocean out there, but we don't realize that there are ships that cross the ocean and bring us pretty much everything on the table, and that and the economics of that transport, the economics of those ships, has a direct bearing on everything in our lives. Every loaf of bread, everything we have, comes on a ship or on a plane, and the way that works will define what we pay, and what we pay will define what our economy is like.
Sure.
And of course, in the contingent sense, if things go bad, you know, that will be a big problem for us.
The state of Hawaii in the early 1990s commissioned a study to find out just exactly how much of our merchandise arrives by various different means. And they found that about 80% of what we consume is imported. And of that, 98% arrives by sea. So only a very small portion of what we consume actually arrives on an airplane.
It's interesting. So, I mean, our whole economy is based on this.
Sure.
And we talk so much, you know, in the energy context, we talk about, you know, foreign oil and how, you know, we send $6 or $7 billion out of the state to buy foreign oil, but we buy foreign everything. When I say foreign, I mean mainland too.
Off island, yeah.
Off island, we spend a lot more than $6 or $7 billion on all the things, you know, that come by ship. Sure. And that's why this is really important to understand how it moves, what the economics are, and operative, what's the competition? Because competition affects price.
Sure.
No competition, I don't have to tell you, the price is higher. That's the way it works. That's humanity.
Right. And in the maritime world, it also determines what kinds of vessels are available, so what you can do in your economy.
Yeah. Okay, so before we got off on that, I was saying, as far as I know, there's only 2 carriers that were on scene doing inter-island, intra-state shipping at the time the legislature adopted this famous or infamous Act 213 in 2011.
Right.
And you mentioned, no, that may not be entirely true because Matson was also involved in the inter-island trade. Tell us how that works.
The only two carriers at the time that had a certificate of public convenience and necessity were YB and Pasha. And of course, the Super Ferry at one time had a same certificate. But Matson operates a fleet of 4 inter-island barges, 3 which are container carriers and 1 which is a ro-ro carrier. And they use those vessels to transship their own cargo from Honolulu to the various neighbor island ports.
Because the big container ships are too big to go to the neighbor islands.
And it would be too expensive, and there aren't any container cranes to take the containers off and on the ship.
So that's really an extension of their interstate
Service.
service.
Exactly.
So yes, it's inter-island, but it's really an extension of what they do from here to the mainland and from here to Asia.
And in the same way, Young Brothers transports Horizon Line transshipment cargo to the neighbor island ports under a contract, which is not part of their PUC certificate cargo.
Because it's not really intra-state.
It's being done on the basis of a contract.
It's the same thing, right? So it's but it's an extended shipment from interstate.
It's a through bill of lading on a continuous movement.
Right, and as you said before, what's left of Pasha, that is Pasha stopping in multiple ports within the state, but merely transferring things from out of the state to each of those ports. That's the same thing. It's an extension of the interstate trade.
It is interstate trade, yeah.
It is interstate, so it's not really intrastate.
Exactly.
So the pure intrastate trade that was going on in 2011 when Act 213 was devised was really only Young Brothers and Pasha.
Right. And Young Brothers' problem is that their cargo volume, Young Brothers that is, has not recovered to 2008 levels, even at this date.
What's going on?
Yeah.
What happened?
I believe that probably more and more cargo is moving via Matson and Horizon Lines direct, through to the neighbor island ports, as opposed to cargo landing here in Hawaii and then being in Honolulu and being reshipped to the neighbor islands.
Okay, Horizon is also in the interstate trade, not the intra-state trade. Okay, so it looks like in 2011, Act 213 was, correct me if you feel otherwise, maybe this is simplistic, but it looks like that act is aimed straight at Pasha.
Absolutely. And protecting Young Brothers from any future challenges.
Right, because not only would Pasha be out of the intra-state trade, nobody else could come in to the intra-state trade. It's over except for Young Brothers.
Exactly.
And so now, after Act 213, effectively, because of these onerous obligations imposed on the PUC, effectively,
that the PUC is obliged to impose on a new entrant.
Right. What it means is Young Brothers has a permanent monopoly on the pure intra-state, inter-island trade.
Exactly.
For as long as anybody can imagine.
Right.
How do we get there? I mean, nobody likes monopoly in this country. I thought we put that away 100 years ago.
Well, actually, there are a number of shippers, i.e. those cargo owners who ship their cargo on Young Brothers, who actually favored Act 213.
Why?
Because they felt that that the state needed to keep the integrity of the Young Brothers service together to ensure that there would be regular transportation to all the various neighbor island ports.
Okay, I think what I hear you saying is they were concerned that if Young Brothers did not have a monopoly, that it would suffer financially.
Sure.
And if it suffered financially, it might go out of business,
or have
and then it would undermine the integrity of this interstate connection.
Exactly.
Is that true? It sounds like you really wonder if that's true. I mean, they've had effectively at least half a monopoly for a long time, and PUC has given them rates that make them happy. They're regulated intrastate, aren't they?
Sure.
So they could get the rates that the PUC would agree was necessary to keep them in business. Why was everybody so worried that they wouldn't be able to stay in business if they could get those high rates?
Because they're competing with the cargo that's moving directly or via transshipment to the neighbor island ports. It's not a static market.
Yeah.
So, and Young Brothers has actually received a number of quite large rate increases because their cargo volume fell during the recession and hasn't recovered. Meanwhile, their expenses continue to increase.
And they have to have the ships online and spend the money.
Barges and the tugs.
And these are American hulls.
Yeah.
Which are the most expensive kind of hulls.
In the world.
By far.
Yes.
Thank you. We'll get to that too. So, okay, I mean, to me, let me ask you this again, though. I mean, was there a legitimate concern? Is there now a legitimate concern that a regulated shipper like Young Brothers, carrier, would suffer, could actually go out of business, so that we have to protect and make that company enjoy what effectively is a monopoly right now?
Exactly, yeah, that's the concern. And perhaps not completely go out of business, but they may cut back in service in terms of frequency. Rates could go higher. For example, rates to Molokai and Lanai are subsidized by the big ports of Kahului and Hilo and Kauai High. So this is the Young Brothers operates as sort of an integral system. And if you start to take cargo away from that system suffers.
I remember some, litigation, I think it was, in front of the PUC on Lanai. Litigation between Young Brothers and Pasha. It was sort of a spat in the middle of all of this.
The litigation occurred after the passage of Act 213. Mm-hmm. And then Young Brothers went to the PUC and, in the form of a request or letter, saying that now that Act 213 has amended the Hawaii Water Carriers Act, that and these were just clarifications of the original act, that the PUC should now rescind the certificate that was issued to Pasha.
Even before its expiration.
Exactly, yeah.
That was, that must have been right after 2011, yeah? Right after.
It was
so they were really driving right in there immediately on the passage of that bill.
Yeah, right after the passage of Act 213.
Yeah.
They filed this request with the PUC. The PUC denied it. And so Young Brothers went to court. And basically the court said that you can't have a retroactive law.
That's what it would have been,
sure,
had they accepted the Young Brothers' position.
And they said it was not a clarification. And the PUC even said that Act 213 is a major revision of the statute to include a number of substantive requirements that were previously not part of the statute. So it didn't fly. Young Brothers' suit did not fly. And so Pasha's certificate remained, interim certificate, remained in effect into 12/31 last year.
Wow.
Yeah.
All of this is amazing. And the public doesn't know about this. Anyway, this is Think Tech Talks. Community matters. I mean, it really matters. I'm here with Norman Hansen, as opposed to all the other Mark Hansens you may know, president of the Hawaii Shippers Council. And we're talking about Act 213 and how it affects the intrastate, inter-island trade, the cargo trade in Hawaii, and thus the price of the stuff on our table and in our homes. We'll be right back after this break.
Aloha, I'm Nicole Horry for Think Tech. For nearly half a century, the Hawaii Foreign Trade Zone No. 9 has brought the benefits of the Foreign Trade Zone program to Hawaii businesses and entrepreneurs. DBET, the Department of Business, Economic Development and Tourism, operates Hawaii's Foreign Trade Zone program to encourage international business and economic development. The Foreign Trade Zone's mission is to increase the amount of international trading activity in Hawaii, thereby providing employment opportunities for the residents of our island state. For more information, see ftz9.org. I'm Nicole Horry. Mahalo.
Okay, we're back. We're live. We're here at Think Tech Talks, talking about community matters, and community does matter, with Mike Hansen, president of Hawaii Shippers Council. We're talking about Act 213 and the fact that Pasha, which is a shipper that was based on the mainland, I guess, pulled out of the intra-state, inter-island market as of the expiration of its temporary certificate of convenience and necessity granted by the PUC as of December 31st, a few days ago. And now, Mike, we want to talk about how that affects everything. So I guess the way to begin that discussion, if you will, is tell us who Young Brothers is and what they mean to the economy of the state, and then tell us what Act 213 does to the economy of the state.
Sure. Young Brothers is an inter-island barge carrier. They're a common carrier, which means that they're open to the public as far as the receiving of cargo. And they operate under the auspices of the Hawaii Water Carriers Act of 1975 and a PUC Certificate of Public Convenience and Necessity, otherwise known as a monopoly license. And Young Brothers was formed originally in around 1900 by the Young family, basically as a launch and tug assist operator in Honolulu Harbor. They became the major hauler of pineapple from Kaunakakai, Molokai to the canneries here in Honolulu. And that continued through the end of World War II. After World War II, Oahu Railway and Walter F. Dillingham, who was the man who controlled Oahu Railway, purchased Young Brothers after the war, and then extended the Young Brothers, took the Young Brothers service into common carriage between the islands, in competition with a company known as Inter-Island Steamship Company. And the more efficient tug and barge operation, for many different reasons, succeeded in pushing Inter-Island out of the business. Oahu Railway purchased whatever assets of Inter-Island were left, and they became the main carrier by 1950.
And they remain that today.
Ever since, yeah.
If not the exclusive inter-island carrier right now.
Common carrier. And at the time...
Inter-island, yeah, okay.
At the time, they were regulated by the Federal Maritime Commission under the territory of Hawaii. Upon statehood, the regulation of the inter-island surface transportation market was given to the state. And that's when Young Brothers became a PUC-regulated company.
Okay.
And interestingly, at statehood, the Inter-Island Air Service remained with the Civil Aeronautics Board, Aviation Board, CAB, until it was dismantled in the Carter administration. And till this day, inter-island air carriage remains a federal regulatory arena, and the ocean transportation inter-island is a local, as a state function.
Is there a rational reason for that distinction?
It was a deal made at statehood.
Got it. That's the way it works. Okay. All right, so tell us, and who owns Young Brothers today?
At one time, Young Brothers, like Oahu Railway and Land Company, got transferred or became part of Dillingham Corporation. It was sold to Hawaiian Electric, HEI, and then sold to a company called Salt Chuck Resources of Seattle, Washington. And Salt Chuck Resources also owns a number of different maritime and aviation companies. So they also own Aloha Cargo Transport. So they effectively control...
the successor to Aloha Airlines.
Exactly. So they control the inter-island cargo market, both in terms of ocean and air.
Why does that trouble me.
And so it's
And they opposed the super ferry too.
sure, of course, yeah, because that was competition.
That was competition. So there is no, effectively, there is no pure intra-state, inter-island competition right now, either air or sea.
Yeah, there's a limited amount with Hawaiian Airlines, but Hawaiian Airlines is
It's ancillary to
Yeah.
the passenger traffic, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so now so Solcheck owns it. It has huge control. What then is the effect on our economy?
well, yeah, the inter-island common carriage of freight between the islands is really important in terms of affecting our economy here locally. It gives manufacturers in Honolulu the opportunity to sell their merchandise on the neighbor islands. It gives neighbor island manufacturers, and there are some,
And agricultural producers.
To ship to Oahu, where the main population center is. So this is a very important part of our economy. And this is why many of the state legislators, even many of the shippers who ship inter-island, cargo owners who ship inter-island, were in favor of Act 213 because they wanted to see the integrity of Young Brothers maintained so that this inter-island shipping service system would remain intact.
Did they not understand that competition means lower prices usually?
Right, but the big problem is if competition comes in, and as Young Brothers accused Pasha of doing, is cherry picking, taking the easiest, most lucrative cargoes.
That was the case in the Lanai trade, right?
Lanai
That was a cherry picking kind of thing.
Lanai is a small trade. I can't imagine Pasha even contemplating. I don't think their ships could get into into the harbor there.
Okay, whatever. Okay,
Kamalapau is the name of the harbor.
thank you.
Yeah. So I don't think that would have. I think your memory's a little faulty along those lines.
It's okay. I always rely on you, Mike. Anyway, carry on. So the economy then.
So yeah, I mean, so it's an integral part of the economy, the state's economy. It's very necessary. And for example, the larger ports of Kahului and Hilo cross-subsidize service to Kaunakakai, Molokai, and to Lanai, for example. So this is all worked out within the Young Brothers system, and many people feel that's very important. The problem, of course, in the future is if Young Brothers, well, one problem Young Brothers has been facing is that their cargo volume has not recovered to 2008 levels. That's when the recession hit. So their cargo volume has been stagnant at best.
But they've made huge investments. I know this.
Sure.
In their equipment.
Sure.
And they have
also
to pay that off so that they're below expectations in revenue.
Their cargo volume has remained stagnant while their operating costs have been increasing.
Yeah.
As normally happens.
Yeah.
And so they've had to ask for several quite large rate increases.
But they've gotten them.
Sure. But that drives cargo from the inter-island service to a point where people on the outside, on the neighbor islands, would be saying, instead of buying from a merchant in Honolulu, I'm going to buy directly from the mainland and have Matson bring my container to Kahului, for example.
Then it's cheaper.
Yeah, and so you hit that wall where you can't push the price of the freight up any higher.
It's troubling that the state can't trade cheap within its own
borders,
as it can by transshipping from outside the state.
Yeah.
This is troubling because it makes the state less integrated as a market, as an economy. If they have to go outside instead of staying inside, especially for manufactured, like produce from farms.
Sure.
So here we have no super ferry. We have one company that has effectively an intra-state, inter-island monopoly.
Absolutely.
On both land and air.
No, sea and air.
Sea and air. I'll get that. And then we have the Jones Act, which means that this company has to have American hulls,
Sure.
and that makes everything more expensive.
Sure, but
So what's the relief from all this, Mike? It sounds like ultimately we're going to pay more and more and more, especially the neighbor islands.
That could potentially be the outcome. The problem that Young Brothers is facing over the long term, and the people who depend upon Young Brothers, is if Young Brothers can't control their operating costs, what happens at the end of the day? And that's an open question. In terms of the Jones Act, and Pasha, of course, operates a Jones Act vessel. Interestingly, it was built at a shipyard in Mississippi, Pascagoula to be precise, that's owned by a Singapore company. And the design of the ships was a foreign design. It was built under license.
You know, this all comes back in a funny way. I mean, not all of it, but the conversation comes back to the Jones Act.
Sure.
Which we will do again. We will have that conversation again and again until we understand exactly what it is, how it affects us, and what can be done by the citizens of this state to get some relief from the escalating prices that result from the Jones Act. That's Mike Hansen, President of Hawaii Shippers Council. This is Think Tech Talks about community matters, and community does matter here at Think Tech. Thank you very much, Mike, for being on the show. Say goodbye.
Goodbye, everyone. Thank you for listening.
We'll be right back with Hawaii, the State of Energy.